Welcome back to the Birdhouse Dynasty show, and today we're going to give you a couple of week 2 ad drops, buy sells, however you want to look at it. We're going to work on quarterbacks and tight ends today. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at clemke007_FF and on Patreon at patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty show. And be sure to like and subscribe. Right now, we've got Matt English here in the house. We're going to get rolling into some quarterbacks. Matt, how's it going? How did week 1 go for you? Pretty wild week, huh?
Yeah, pretty crazy week. You could say that. Some things happened the way we thought they would. A lot of things didn't happen the way we thought they would. But we'll get into a lot of that here just with quarterbacks and tight ends.
All right, let's get into the quarterbacks. And so let's bring up the first quarterback we want to talk about, and that would be Mr. Kyler Murray. Yes, Kyler had a rough week in the loss. Started off hot, but then not so great. What are you thinking, Matt, here with Kyler?
Well, I've got him as a buy low candidate. And if you do own Kyler Murray as an absolute hold, it's this will probably be the theme on a lot of my holds throughout these types of shows. Is it's week 1, relax. It's week 1, so Kyler Murray came out hot. He was firing on all pistons. Things seemed to be just working for the Cardinals, but then Buffalo played better defense. They made adjustments. And then here comes Josh Allen. So there's no reason to hit the panic button. The volume was there. I think he had 31 attempts. He was still at like 67% because he hit 21 of them. He had a passing touchdown. He had the rushing there. So I would just be patient. The volume's there. The rushing's there. It was a tough defense in week 1. I get it, but it's on the road. Hold and just pump the brakes with Kyler Murray.
Absolutely agree here. Yeah, the best thing I saw here was the 5 for 57 on the ground. I think a lot of people were concerned about, second year back from the ACL injury, about his rushing ability. 5 for 57 shows to me that it's still there and that he's going to be able to get outside of the pocket and look downfield and hopefully hit Marvin Harrison in the upcoming weeks. I mean, the guy's too talented. Marvin's going to be open in the future weeks. I know that the internet's showing this one play where Marv was wide open, but to me, it looked like the defense was all crashing on the offensive line. And that's just one of those things that Twitter's liking to put Kyler down with a little bit and try and feed into that hype. I'm on your side. I would buy or hold Kyler. Absolutely. It's week 1. And it was in Buffalo. I mean, the Cardinals were supposed to get blown out of that game. But other than a turnover or whatever, they could have won that game. So they had their chances to win that game.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So next up, we're going to get into another higher end quarterback, and that would be Mr. Joe Burrow of the Cincinnati Bengals, who had quite the drama-filled week 1. First, you had the Jamar Chase contract episode where we didn't even know until 10 minutes before kickoff whether he was a contract was going to be announced. I mean, we got that Dak Prescott contract early Sunday morning, and so I don't know. For me, Joe Burrow, he's either a buy or a hold. The leagues I've got Burrow in, I'm definitely holding. Burrow, the Bengals as a whole generally don't start off well in September. I don't know what it is, but all I know is I changed my pick from the Bengals to the Seahawks in the survivor pool, and that paid off for me. So what are your thoughts on Joe Burrow right now, Matt?
Well, as you know, I sold I sold a share of Joe Burrow at a high point during the offseason. I was kind of out on Cincy's offense in general, outside of maybe the running backs, depending on where I could get the best value. That being said, Higgins didn't play this week. Jamar Chase didn't do a whole lot of practicing leading up to this week. We know, like you mentioned, historically, the Bengals aren't great in September. But yeah, this is another one. You got to kind of hold it for another week or two and try to get to October and see what that looks like if you can afford it. If you're in a super flex, or if you're in a one quarterback league and this is your second quarterback, then maybe you make some sort of arrangement to get some value elsewhere. But I wouldn't hit the panic button so quickly on a Joe Burrow. I know the wrist injury is a concern, especially being on the throwing hand. But let's just wait and see. He's got a history of bouncing back in October when he's healthy and putting up some fantastic fantasy numbers. So I agree with you on the hold aspect.
Interesting for the Bengals. They do travel to Kansas City this week, which will be a, week 2 highlighted game. So the value on Burrow could change one way or the other very quickly based on this performance in week 2. So we'll see what we have in store in week 2. Now we're going to move down a little bit on the list of quarterbacks into another guy, but he's definitely stepped it up week 1, and that is Sam Darnold. Darnold started off hot out of the gate, 10 for 10, lighting up the New York Giants, which maybe wasn't that surprising. I mean, it was the Giants, but me personally, I felt like the Giants defense was going to be better this year, adding Brian Burns to that pass rush. But fortunately, week 1, it was the same old Giants. So what do you think of the Sam Darnold, though, and the Vikings kind of as a whole here?
I kind of got what I expected there. It's the passing volume was moderate, but he's got great weapons around him, even with the Hawkinson injury and him not starting the season in the active roster. Still got Jefferson, still got Naylor, still got Addison did play. But either which way, he's got the talent there, and he's a good quarterback. I think that year out in San Francisco with Shanahan did a world of good for him. Probably built some confidence, learned some concepts he probably wasn't familiar with, making him a better quarterback. We've heard all offseason how well he was doing in camp, how well he did in the preseason. So this is not a big surprise to me. This is a guy I'm looking to pick up, especially if I own shares of like a Bryce Young or a Will Levis or quarterback, even a Kyler Murray. Maybe this is a guy you want to pick up just as some insurance for some steady play.
Yes. Yeah, Darnold was somebody, as soon as the J.J. McCarthy injury happened, I was buying in wherever I could, whether it was adding him off of waivers in a redraft format or potentially just scooping him up for cheap in Dynasty. Now, like in the league where I had McCarthy, I also had Darnold already. So it just kind of cleaned up the roster for me, so to speak, because I was able to move McCarthy onto IR, and then Darnold was like the placeholder as my QB3. But I looked at Darnold, I'm like, man, this guy's going to be slinging it all season. And now he has the job for sure. So he has a little bit more security within himself. He probably felt more confident going into week 1. And now the Vikings have a tough schedule coming up. I mean, look at it right there. You've got the Niners at home, Houston at home, and then they travel to the Packers, and then they have the Jets. So those are 4 pretty good defenses you've got coming up there. I mean, of those games, maybe they be favored against the Packers now with the Jordan Love injury, but they're going to be underdogs in all those games. And so you could see some ugly performances from Darnold, but I mean, fantasy wise, if he throws for 300, 2 touchdowns and 3 picks, I don't mind that fantasy wise. I'm just looking at him as a kind of a Jameis Winston, right?
Well, yeah, look at it this way too. San Francisco and Houston are at home. Green Bay could still be without Jordan Love come week 4. up there in Green Bay. So of those matchups, I mean, I could see him doing well. And don't be surprised if Sam Darnold sneaks one across himself.
Right. Yes, he's
There's
still only 27 years
there's a
old.
touchdown in there for Darnold in those first 3 to 4 weeks.
Absolutely. I mean, he's still only 27 years old. Remember, he was a top 5 pick in the NFL draft. The guy has the talent. He was just, to me, in awful situations. Now, you can say that about a lot of guys. They were in bad situations and turned them around. I mean, look at C.J. Stroud. He wasn't in the greatest situation, but he obviously turned it around himself, right? Yeah. And so now Darnold here has an opportunity to literally just turn his whole career around, and he will get in, his hopes is to put the Vikings in an awkward situation next offseason. So we'll see what Darnold has, but go out there and kick the tires on him in your leagues. It can't hurt to do that. At least he still should be cheap. I mean, nobody's going to be asking for a first rounder, or at least I would not pay a first rounder for him, but a second rounder, if your team needs it, think about it. I mean, you got the whole season for him. So a second round pick is literally a 50-50 shot in our rookie drafts. You could do much worse, right? Yeah. So yeah. I would not be opposed to paying a second for Sam Darnold right now if you need him. Okay. Then next up, we've got a couple of other buys. Now they're very similar players, but yet there's a little difference in them as well. Matt, I'm going to let you start it off with your boy Jaden Daniels here.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So another quarterback I was high on preseason, right? He is the pedigree of cheat code because of rushing upside, which we got to see in week 1, right? I mean, he threw 24 passes. He hit 17 of them. But let's be honest, those were short and very intermediate passes. Nothing really stretching the field. I know pre-show we talked about how McLaurin only had 4 looks down the field, or 4 looks in total. But because of his rushing ability and his ability to be able to find a little bit of a hole and, worm his way into the end zone, he had 16 rushing attempts, 80 some odd yards, and 2 touchdowns.
I mean, the rushing there is insane. 16 for 80 exactly. And 2 touchdowns. I mean, how many running backs did that this week?
Not many.
That's just awesome.
Yep. Look, there is some concern. He dropped the ball a few times. He didn't lose any of them, so there is some concern there. But if you were lucky enough to draft him where he was going in drafts, you're putting up 22 to 30 points, depending on what your point setup is and bonuses and all that kind of stuff, for a later draft round or a draft pick at quarterback. So he is absolutely on my buy list. If you have him as your backup, you're putting him in next week.
Absolutely. Right. Yeah. I think it comes down to your roster construction. I mean, if you were able to land him, say, in a redraft format as your QB2, okay, now you could look to maybe the Jordan Love owner and sell your QB1 over to him for another position to upgrade at running back or wide receiver. That's something you can do. I think at least what we got out of Jaden Daniels was he went against a tough, solid defense in Tampa, and he showed up. He didn't play like a rookie, so to speak. All right. They were probably outmatched a little, at least their defense, at least on the defensive side for Washington. Okay. So it was a little disheartening to see only 24 pass attempts, I guess, because we do want to see his passing game evolve, but it was week 1. Okay. Right. So the fact that he didn't sling it 40, 45 times, that's all right, because he did run it 16 times, which is probably twice as much as we would have thought. 8 to 10 rushing attempts, sure. Right. 16 times, that's a lot. So, but again, it was just week 1, and you can't, he didn't throw 3 interceptions in a blowout loss. They got blown out, but he didn't throw any picks. He took what the defense gave him, and he'll he'll progress from here. So I as well am impressed with the performance, even in the loss. All right, we'll move on to the next guy we wanted to just chat a little bit about, and that would be Mr. Anthony Richardson, another Russian quarterback who came up on the short end of the stick in the victory column, but definitely not for fantasy owners. I mean, most who had Anthony Richardson got exactly what they were looking for, right, Matt?
I'd say that's fair. I'd say that's fair. I mean, he didn't throw the ball a ton. I think he had under 20 attempts, hit just under half of them, but he had a big touchdown play. He had two overall touchdowns, but he hit a massive one to Alec Pierce for almost 60 yards. It was like 58 yards, something like that. But he still chipped in 100 rushing yards and an extra rushing touchdown. Even with a turnover, he's still putting up the points you're looking for out of that investment. Anthony Richardson, you're getting what you want, even in a game that's not awesome. They lost.
Exactly.
He was under 50% passing. He still puts up almost 30 points. So that's that dual threat of a quarterback. That's why you invest that kind of draft capital into a guy like that.
And he stayed healthy through a whole game.
How about that?
That's what all of us Richardson owners are crossing our fingers for. Just make it through the game. Now they get the Packers coming up this week. Should be a very interesting game. I mean, the Colts are now favored with Love being out, and who knows what the Packers are going to be able to do offensively. Look for Josh Jacobs to get and Emmanuel Wilson to get a lot of touches there for the Packers. So should be an interesting game. I mean, if the Colts go as Vegas looks, it could be a big Jonathan Taylor week. But with Anthony Richardson, you got to figure they're going to be taking some shots down the field once again this week. Which reminds me, AD Mitchell, you can go out and get him because we might talk about him later in the wide receiver videos. But Alec Pierce and Ashton Doolin are not going to be Richardson's primary targets all season. I think that had to do more with the coverages, and I don't think it'll be their only bomb touchdowns this season, but Richardson definitely took advantage of those opportunities in week 1. So that's what we like to see. All right. Now we're going to move over to the bottom end of the quarterbacks and the not so high end quarterbacks here. Let's start off with somebody who is a huge sell, and that would be Derek Carr. Carr just lit up the Carolina Panthers, who definitely don't look any better than last season, at least after week 1. So Derek Carr was able to toss 3 touchdowns. Saints just steamrolled them in the second half with the ground game. What do you think of Derek Carr here, Matt?
Go sell high. Sell so high. There's no way this is going to last. They took advantage of a brand new head coach who I have a lot of faith in as a play caller and as a quarterback developer. As a head coach, we don't know yet. The jury's out on that. But, they caught a newly coached team who wasn't ready. And a couple of things hit early, and the snowball just kept getting bigger and bigger. This is not an offense I look to invest a whole lot in. So if I have pieces of the whole offense, and that's outside of Olave, if I have Foster Moreau, if I have Alvin Kamara, if I have Jamal Williams, if I have Derek Carr, or Rashid Shaheed, I'm selling all of them, because this will not last.
Yes, Matt. The Saints were my favorite bet as far as odds go to finish with the worst record in the league. So the fact that they came out and blew out the Panthers, who could literally be the worst team in the league, to me is not saying a whole lot. It just was 2 bad teams going at it, and one of them was just extremely worse than the other. I love Shahid's prospects going forward because of the probably the passing volume that they'll have. But at the same time, he's going to be super up and down and not somebody that I'm looking to start weekly in lineups. Best ball, maybe you can hang on to Shahid, but either way, just as you said, sell high on all the Saints. Just put them on the block, see what you kind of offers you can get out there for them.
Absolutely.
All right. So next up, we're going to slide over to that other team in that matchup, and that would be the Panthers and Bryce Young. So not really a good week one look for Young and new head coach Dave Canales. I don't know what to do here. I did not buy Bryce Young in any leagues really, so I was kind of out on him anyway, even with the new offseason hype. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Bryce Young here?
I bought a couple of shares in some startup drafts as a quarterback 3. And so it did give me the ability to do wait and see, right? And kind of see how good this offense is going to be. Again, it's week 1. I'm not going to totally hit the panic button here, but like I'm kind of hovering over it, right? Just hovering over that button, waiting to push it. In my opinion, you got to get to it like week 6 with these guys to kind of see if they're really going to be what they're going to be, or if they're not going to be that. Are they going to be good players? Are they going to put up the points that we think that they're capable of doing? Because, I mean, let's face it, the weapons are there for Bryce Young. I know there's a tight end we're going to talk about a little bit later here, but the weapons are there. Can he actually pull the trigger when he's given the right time to those targets and make plays happen? Right now, the answer is no. So I understand if you're wanting to hit the sellers immediately. But if you kind of look at some of the matchups, the Chargers is going to be a tough win. But then they're on the road against Vegas. Then they got Cincinnati, who has a tough September identity. And then they have Green Bay, probably Jordan Love-ish coming back around then. Or is it
maybe
back? Maybe
3 to 6 weeks for Love. So who knows right now? Yeah. It's hard to say.
I mean, there's some spots in there for them to win some games, and maybe they jump up and win a game. I don't know. I haven't seen anything that gives me super confidence here on any of their players, but I wouldn't sell them because of that, because they're pretty low right now. I'm not trying to sell that. You give them a week or two and they actually put up some numbers, and then you want to sell them. I get it, But
I mean,
I'm not selling Bryce Young at this moment.
No, at this point, I mean, who is going to buy Bryce Young? Like, it's an impossible sell, unless it's a rebuilding team who's willing to give up a second for him. And is that something you really want to give up? Is a second? I mean, do you want to give up Bryce Young for a second, considering he's still got 16 more games to go in a completely new offense, but with plenty of new weapons? No, I mean, I would hold on to it at least for a couple more weeks and see, at least get through the Chargers and Raiders both have decent defenses. They do. But so do the Saints. I mean, the Saints have talent on the defense. It's more the offense and Derek Carr is where I'm concerned with the Saints going forward. So I don't know. You got to see something though within the month of September from this team to give you some kind of hope going forward. So again, if somebody is actually willing to buy him from you, I would entertain it at least. Now we'll go over to another quarterback who struggled and didn't look that great, and he went up against Sam Darnold. This is Daniel Jones. Oof. Giants just looked like the same old story this past week. I mean, 22 of 42, only 186 yards and 2 picks. Not what we really wanted to see. I mean, I think Malik Neighbors pretty much said it all after the game, right, Matt?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in that quarterback area either. And the fact that they come out, before we even start the practice week and say Daniel Jones will be the starter in week 2. Well, how can you say that after that performance? He's just a clip over 50% passing for 6 yards?
186, actually.
186 yards. 100, so
still on 42 yards. Attempts.
And he's got 2 picks. Yeah, I mean, they've got to at least, in my opinion, it's got to at least be an open quarterback competition because, I mean, Drew Lock didn't look that bad from what I could see in tape and film that was put down. But, I mean, that was got to be one of the worst performances of the weekend. I mean, what are his numbers? What's his touchdown to interception ratio since he signed that big contract?
Well, let's see here. We can look that up real quick.
I bet it's something like 4 or 5, maybe 6 interceptions to like 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Let's see here. So he signed the deal before the 22 season?
I thought it was last year.
Or was it?
I thought it was before
well, if you're just taking 23 and now 24 into consideration, it's 2 touchdowns to 8 interceptions.
There you go.
Yeah.
Enough said. Enough said. Right. Malik Neighbors is a hell of a talent, but man, if that's what you're looking at for your quarterback, I mean, I think we all kind of held out hope maybe something big would happen but let's just be honest. Jones is what he is. He's a terrible quarterback.
Yeah, I'm avoiding. I feel almost bad getting 2 seconds for Daniel Jones before week 1 from a team who, in a best ball format, was kind of left hanging out to dry there at their quarterback situation, and so he was desperate. And somehow I was able to finagle 2 seconds for Daniel Jones in a third. I'll take that all day. Because the guy ended up with less than 1 point in week 1.
Wow.
We'll finish off the quarterback area here with a dude who's getting a shot now because of Jordan Love's injury. I mean, we've got Malik Willis getting the start this weekend for the Packers against the Colts, as we mentioned earlier. I don't know. Have you actually watched Malik Willis in the last 2 seasons when he was with the Titans?
Yes.
Because were you able to watch a whole game? Because I couldn't. It is painful to watch him. I texted a friend right before the snap on that Hail Mary attempt they needed to do. I said, dude, the Packers are just better off letting this guy try to run it in from the 50-yard line.
Yeah.
Any quick thoughts on Malik Willis?
You need to down tier every Packers pass catcher with this coming in.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's already been announced this is the starter. I know he's had at least a little bit of time with the playbook, but does it really matter? Does it? I mean, he's a heck of an athlete, but when you're talking about playing the quarterback position in the NFL, especially in a system like Green Bay's, I mean, I guess they're fortunate that they got him, but my goodness. That's
they're in
probably
trouble.
not the guy I would choose. I mean, unless you're planning on running a 2 quarterback system, but
right. Yeah, it's just trouble in Green Bay. As you said, downgrade. I would not start any Green Bay receiver.
No.
Josh Jacobs, sure. He's going to get the volume. I don't know how effective he'll be because obviously the Colts are probably going to stack the box a little bit because you can't be afraid of Willis's arm. And so, again, I mean, in a redraft format, Musgrave is a drop pretty much right now, unless it's a super, super deep league. But all of the receivers.
And really, I'm passing on Willis. I mean, unless I am in a 2 quarterback league and I desperately need a quarterback, I'm probably passing. I'd rather play a receiver or running back or a tight end in that super flex, unless it's a 2 quarterback deal. And then, of course, maybe it's someone I plug in. But I'd have to be pretty desperate to go pick up Malik Willis or spend any sort of fab to try and get.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a 16-man league where the Jordan Love owner, didn't go hard at a backup, and so now he's in a real bad situation. All he has is Taysom Hill. But I'd probably start Taysom Hill over Malik Willis at quarterback.
That's fair.
So that's where it's at. I mean, they're literally, Malik Willis is going to be ranked. Jaden Reed might be an okay. I mean, just because of the jet sweeps, Reed, if you're a super deep format where you get to start 6 wide receivers, maybe you could still keep Jaden Reed in your lineup, but still, I mean, I would still start somebody like Tyler Boyd.
That's a really risky flex play. Most people with 10 to 12 team leagues, you're not playing Packers this week or until Jordan Love.
No. Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs, Wicks, all to the bench. That's the big kicker for this Jordan Love injury. All right, let's roll over to the tight end position here, and we will get things rolling with the man of the week. I think that we have all been talking about everywhere what to do with him. It was just an unlikely performance from Isaiah Likely. I mean, yes, we saw the glimpses in past years, even with Mark Andrews there. Definitely in weeks that Andrews missed, you saw Likely step it up. But this time we saw Likely do it with Mark Andrews somewhat healthy. Now, granted, remember, Andrews did have that car accident a couple weeks ago. So the, is Andrews completely healthy? I doubt it. They're probably easing him back in. He did play a bunch of snaps still. And game script kind of fell into this, Likely getting 12 targets and 9 catches because a few of those were just dump offs. But he was a monster on that 50-yard touchdown. I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's a buy if you're in trouble at tight end, but do you really want to pay the price? It's all up to the Likely owner in your league. I can't imagine anybody pretty much putting all their eggs into the Isaiah Likely basket to start the season. So anybody who has him probably can sell him. It's just a matter of their price. And that depends on each league as a whole. The owner sets the market and whether or not he wants to hold on to him. What are your thoughts on Isaiah Likely?
All right. Depending on your format, you got to spend like 20 to 30% of your fab to get him. That's where I'm at. If it's best ball, if it's tight end premium, if you can start more than one tight end, I'm buying him because, I mean, look, regardless of when Andrews comes back, this is clearly someone who's going to be involved. He was on the field with Andrews. And if you look, some of those dump offs were there, but these are chemistry throws. He settled in the zones. He made himself available for Lamar to make those dump offs. And we know he's an athletic freak. We've seen it before in years past. But then you got to see all of it kind of collectively come together in this one game. He's a buy for me. I would absolutely buy this guy if he's sitting on your waiver wire. I'm looking at like 20 to 30% of fab, somewhere in that range, to spend on him. Especially if you're in best ball, that's a guy where I'm maxing at 30% for best ball. So if you do have him and you're stacked at tight end, get everything you can. That Lamar Jackson owner would love that stack. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I mean, every year there's that one guy in week 1 or 2 that is the not necessarily league winner, but difference maker, like Puka Nacua, like Tank Dell last season. Is it Isaiah Likely this year? That's the big question that we're all asking ourselves. And so do you want to get in on it or not? I say definitely.
I do.
So,
I'm in on Likely.
So we had a lot of bad performances from the top end tight ends, no doubt. I mean, Kyle Pitts was the tight end 3 with 2 catches and a touchdown. So what we're looking at is a down market in tight ends. So nobody was happy with their starting tight end this last week. But does that mean because you have Travis Kelce that you're going to all of a sudden start likely over him in week 2? I wouldn't. Okay, I know how you feel about Kelce, but I wouldn't be starting likely over Kelce. Now, does that mean that I wouldn't be putting fab in on him? No, not necessarily. It definitely depends on your league. If you're in a shallow redraft where you only have like 15 roster spots, it's hard to keep a tight end on your bench, honestly. I mean, I do not recommend having a tight end on your bench in such a shallow format. But if you're in a little deeper league, like 18 guys on your team, sure. I mean, all dynasty formats likely was already rostered, so that's a totally different ball game you're looking at. You're looking at what does the guy want for him.
Right.
But in redraft, absolutely drop 30% on him. And if you have Njoku or Ferguson, who are both banged up and likely out a few weeks, go ahead and hammer the fab on him, because you're not going to find somebody else out there other than Luke Schoonmaker, who I did want to mention this, but he's going to be the man in Dallas now. And so Schoonmaker is going to get the snaps. Dak does like his tight end. And Ferguson isn't exactly, the greatest athlete. So he kind of was just volume dependent anyway. So Schoonmaker should get some points. You can throw a little, if you don't think you're going to win on likely, throw a few fab onto Schoonmaker as well. But again, likely is the prize this week. Did you want to add anything more on likely?
No, I think we covered it there.
Okay. All right. One other guy that I would add possibly would be Greg Dulcich. So if you don't think you're going to win on likely, or if you just want to hedge your bets, Schoonmaker's one guy, Greg Dulcich is another. We all know that Bo Nix likes to just throw short passes. He had a lot of passing volume. Let me bring up Greg Dulcich here. Bo Nix had a lot of passing volume this week, but was pretty underwhelming with the yardage total. And so I think going forward, we could see an emerging Greg Dulcich here. I mean, it's a receiving room that isn't overwhelmed with talent in Denver. You have Cortland Sutton there, who got a ton of targets week 1. But the number 2 target was Devon Vele, who did grab 8 balls this week. And then you have Greg Dulcich here, who had just 3 targets, 2 catches. Not a spectacular line, but I like the snap share. He had like 70% of the snaps. So he is going to get targeted over the course of the season. Yeah. So he's a sneaky little cheap buy, I guess you could say. Any thoughts on Schoonmaker or Dulcich?
No, not really. In the tight ends, I know it was pretty underwhelming for week 1, but it's one of those, all the top tight ends were pretty quiet, right? I mean, outside of Isaiah Likely, Pitts was 2. I don't know who was 3, but I mean, you didn't have Laporta there. You didn't have Kincaid. You didn't have Trey McBride. Kelce was, 8 points in a premium league. So, I mean, it wasn't a big tight end week. It's one of those weeks where I just kind of hang tight with what I have. If I'm able to roster and take on a likely, I'm going to do it. If I can. If I can afford to do it, I will. If I can't, I'm still holding tight with my tight ends. Being the fact that I am a Ferguson and an Njoku owner.
Many of us are. Yeah.
I am looking to buy certain tight ends who underperformed in week 1. Let's talk about a deal for a Laporta or a Kincaid. Why not? They're not going to be any lower than they are now.
Right. And the likely performance brings up Mark Andrews. And what do we want to do with Mark Andrews? So I have a couple of questions here for you, Matt.
Sure.
A little off the script here. So in a buy-sell situation, we had Xavier Worthy blow up week 1 in just his 3 touches, got in the end zone twice. Would you, let's call it a 12-team half-point premium for tight ends, would you buy or would you be aboard for selling Xavier Worthy for Mark Andrews right now?
I would want more for Xavier Worthy.
You'd be ahead on
So
Xavier
I would sell
Worthy.
Xavier, and I would take Andrews plus. Yeah. Throw me some
How about
capital and cushion the blow if it doesn't pan out. Yeah.
Okay, we're still in Dynasty, same format, Xavier Worthy for Isaiah Likely.
No.
Okay. Let's just go right to it. Isaiah Likely or Mark Andrews?
Okay. And with nothing else on the board for Dynasty, then I want Likely. It's just a free grind.
I think you're
gaining. I want
gaining.
him for the longer term, but I'm not willing to give up a young asset in Xavier Worthy to see if a tight end pans out. But I'll give up Xavier Worthy for a tight end that has panned out plus draft capital.
Yeah. But Likely for Andrews straight up, you'll take the years. You'll take the 4 or 5 years that you're getting with Isaiah Likely right now.
Higher ceiling, lower floor, younger player risk there. Yeah.
All right. And how about another guy who kind of disappointed, but Derrick Henry for Isaiah Likely?
In Dynasty?
Dynasty.
I'd give up Derrick Henry for Isaiah Likely.
Ooh, that's a hot one.
Because I'm going to get capital on top of it.
Because
Derrick Henry's going like 5th round in startup Dynasty, 5th, 6th round, something like that. Maybe a little bit later.
Yeah, he might be going later, 7th or 8th. I've seen him drop to.
7th or 8th. Where's Likely going? 15th?
That's what I mean. Where does Likely go right now? Would you take Likely over Ferguson or Njoku?
Yeah.
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 I don't disagree. I mean, I'm right in there. I would probably lean Njoku, but I don't know about Ferguson.
Now Njoku's going to miss like 4 to 6.
Yeah, the injury for Ferguson doesn't look good. The injury for Njoku probably isn't as bad. So, I would lean Njoku, but Likely over Ferguson slightly, I would say.
See, here's the other thing, too, is it gets into quarterback play as well. And Deshaun Watson was terrible. Terrible this week. I don't care about how many times he got hit. There were several times I watched him move into the pressure. It looks like he's waiting to get hurt so he doesn't have to play football to collect his check. And with that kind of mentality, or at least that look of a quarterback, it's harder for me to buy players around him. So I'd rather have Lamar, who's an absolute warrior, running with 2 tight ends. I'll take the chance on the younger tight end all day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Lamar has shown that he trusts the tight end position. And so, if Andrews goes down at any point this season, which, based on past history, Andrews hasn't exactly been a pillar of health. So you could see Likely at certain points in this season just dominate the targets once again. We're going to finish off this one with, we've got one more tight end to talk about quick, and that is the rookie who snuck kind of under the radar for a lot of people. That's JT Sanders of the Carolina Panthers. I just bring him up because I like the snap share. He had, 73% of the snaps. Tommy Tremble's banged up. He is a super buy low that you can basically get for free right now. Again, this goes back to our discussion on Bryce Young, and that you want to kind of play it as a wait and see with Bryce Young, not an immediate just cut or sell. You got to give him a few weeks to adapt to the new offense here. And so I know JT Sanders was kind of one of your guys in the offseason. What do you think there quickly? Matt?
Yeah, so I tend to like super athletic tight ends. We like tight end premium style leagues. So anytime I can find myself a young athletic tight end who could come into a situation that's advantageous to that, for them being able to have a high snap share, I like those guys. And I think until the combine, Jatavian Sanders was default number 2 tight end in the draft. And then the combine happened, and here comes a guy from Kansas State named Ben Sinnott. And then he was the number 2 consensus. Jatavian Sanders, and the people forgot about Jatavian Sanders, and Carolina kind of picked him up a little bit later than we expected him to go. And look at what he did at Texas with Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell around him. He still commanded his own target share and still was a red zone presence. So I think he's a great buy low. Like you said, you can get him for free for the most part. Unless you're
absolutely with the other tight ends this week. I mean, Schoonmaker, you'll have to bid on probably because the Ferguson owner is going to put something on him, right? But yeah, nobody's putting anything, even in Dynasty, nobody's putting anything on Jatavian Sanders. You can get him for absolutely free.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, why not take the shot?
Right. Okay. Well, there you have it on our quarterback and tight end buy, sell, add drops for the week. We're going to be doing a wide receiver and running back video later on. Probably split those up just because there's so many players at those positions. But if you have any comments or questions for your particular league, just kind of make sure to leave your league format. That's super important to answer a question, especially when it comes to tight end and the bench space available. Because I'm a big proponent on not even having a backup tight end unless it's absolutely necessary. So super important there to leave your league format. And check us out. Check me out on Twitter, clemke007_FF. Check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. And you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. And for Matt English, don't forget to smash the like and subscribe. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back later with more. Don't forget, never stop working.